very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for being here with us on a Saturday morning. I'm always tempted to think of Facebook not as a company, but as a country. Think about it, 2.2 billion people. I mean, it has completely changed the way we interact, coordinate, and communicate not just with our loved ones, but also with our peers and business partners, not to talk of the community. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, we are very excited to have with us this morning a gentleman who's very closely associated with Facebook's innovation engine. He is responsible for the rollout of most of those exciting and new products that you see coming out of the Facebook stable. Please allow me to welcome Ash Jhaveri. Welcome to the Conclave, Ash.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Ash, I'm going to start by saying that there are many in this room, including me, who really envy you your job. I mean, look at us. We're still struggling at multiple levels with, natural stupidity, but you go on to work on artificial intelligence. We are still battling what is ground reality for us, and you've moved on to augmented reality and virtual reality. I mean, how exciting is your job? You must be jumping out of the bed every morning, right?
It is. It's, I have a very, very lucky position. I get to think a lot about the future technologies, the things that we need to do to continue to innovate, to continue to deliver the service that we do, right? We have a great service today. How do we continue to make it better and better and better? Look, in terms of getting out of bed every morning, the thing that excites me and the thing that excites everyone that works at Facebook is our mission, right? Fundamentally, people at Facebook believe in connecting people, connecting the world, giving tools so that we can build community. And I have a very personal example around this, which is my parents are actually both from Mumbai. They actually grew up just up the road in Suresh Colony. I think it's just a couple kilometers from here. They emigrated to the States where I was born, and when I was quite young, we moved back to India. My father, being the only son, felt the urge to come back home, and it was fantastic. I remember, being 4 or 5 years old, being with my grandparents, being with cousins, aunts, uncles, surrounded by family. My grandfather used to take me for walks on Jew Beach. Like, I remember my first camel ride. I remember the balloons, And then what happened a few months later is that my dad felt quite sick. We ended up having to move back to the States for health reasons. I remember going from being surrounded by all this love and all this family to just being the three of us. And it felt very lonely. It was one of those things where I remember these blue airmail envelopes. I don't know if those are still being used or not.
We all remember the airmail envelopes that we used to use to communicate earlier. Yes, we do.
Yeah, and I remember my parents waiting eagerly, for them to come from India and quickly opening them up and digesting them, hearing about the big events that were happening with all the family we left behind, rapidly writing a response, maybe tucking in a picture, of me or something like that as I was growing and sending them back. And waiting back and forth, and that was sort of the pace of communication. And, sure, we knew all the big things that were happening in people's lives, but, life happens in between those big events, right? It's the sort of mundane events that keep you connected. And we just miss that, and we crave that. Now, look, fast forward 40-ish years, plus or minus, and, those blue airmail envelopes have been replaced by the blue Facebook app for us, right? We now have a Facebook group for our family that covers 3 continents. My parents are able to see my kids. My kids are able to see their cousins in Singapore. And, we're posting text, we're posting photos, we're posting videos. And we all stay connected. What keeps me excited is what's next, right? How do we go from these texts and videos to maybe 360 videos, maybe virtual reality, right, where we're sort of doing this conclave, doing that in VR headsets where we're even more connected.
So you're also doing a lot of work around artificial intelligence, which is, basically, as you said, we've migrated miles from the way we used to communicate. But now it's getting even better. It's getting so immersive. So what are those exciting things that you're doing at work with VR and AR and artificial intelligence?
It's, sitting through the keynote last night, I was thinking maybe we're not doing enough because neither of us are a robot yet. Maybe you are a robot. I don't actually know how to prove it.
I'm not.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I'm not. as well. No, look, we're doing a lot with AI, and just to kind of sort of level set, because there's a lot of talk around AI, right? Everyone is talking about it in all kinds of forms. Look, I think, at least put very simply, it's all about how can computers learn, right? How can they take inputs from the outside world and learn and continue to present results that are different and that are new, right? In the old days, if you wrote a program and you inputted something, you get the same output back every time, right? What happens now with AI is like I input something else, I input something else. Over time, the machine learns, it gets better, right? The more data that you put into the machine, the smarter it gets. So imagine recognizing a face. Having one picture, there's only so many contours I can understand. If I have 1,000 pictures or 1,000,000 pictures, suddenly I start getting a really good understanding of what faces look like. I can identify eyes, I can identify eyebrows, I can identify eyelashes. So, a lot of the work that we're doing today is just very, very basic. We're building the tools. AI is nowhere near as smart as people give it credit for today. It's very segmented use cases where, you have to feed in a lot of data. And you learn from it. And look, we're using it all throughout the platform. There's a great example of if folks here remember, there was a devastating hurricane in Puerto Rico about a year ago, and it wiped out a lot of the infrastructure. There was a woman in Chicago that basically started a Facebook group saying, "Hey, I'm coming down to Puerto Rico. What can I bring?" And it was amazing. What we saw was people from all over Puerto Rico were connected on Facebook. They would be posting in real time, I need water and I'm in this location, or I need food and I'm in this location.
We've done a lot of that in India during the floods as well. So Facebook had a role to play in telling people that they're stuck.
Exactly. This is a global thing. But the amazing thing here was that this map is being updated in real time, right? And all people are doing is saying, I'm here, I need this. Our machines in the background are parsing that, putting that onto a map so that by the time she lands, she knows where to go, she knows how to optimize her trip. Even as her trip is going on, we're digesting all of this information and changing things in real time. That's the kind of stuff that AI is able to do today. And like you say, this is not just a US thing. Like we build these tools globally.
It's so exciting, I think we're not even conscious, because I'm sure from the time we woke up this morning, we would have used it 10 times in one form or the other. So it's not as if we're talking into the future. It's already rolling out somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's here. I mean, look, search engines are probably the best example of this today that we use. How many people have already done a Google search today, or will today at some point? Probably everybody. Search engines try to guess intent, right? They try to guess what you want and you want and you want. It's all different. Right, it's based on what we've searched for. It's based on our preferences. These are really great examples of just continuing to learn and give different outputs based on different people and different inputs.
Also a little scary at different levels, but we will talk about that later. Ash, since this is a Facebook session, it's only fair that we have a messenger chat format, right? So I'm going to send a few questions your way, and they're going to be brief, and I would expect you to answer them as briefly. The only condition being that you cannot answer like a chatbot. You can't give me templatized one-sentence answers, So you have to give me a...
Can I just use emojis?
No.
No words at all?
Okay, you're free to use emojis, yes? I think that would be interesting to see different expressions on your face. So you game for that? Okay, so the first section... The first question of the messenger chat is, do you think people will ever come to the conclave in flying cars?
Well, I was just sitting next to the transportation minister. I should have brought that up. It sounds like...
Yes, Mr. Gadkari is backstage, so he should have answered that question.
I hope so one day. I'd love to.
But do you think it's happening soon, or 5 years, 10 years into the future?
I think it's further into the future than 5 or 10 years.
Okay. What is the smartphone going to be replaced with?
I don't think it gets replaced anytime soon. The way I think about it is, remember, we used to have computers and they were on desktops. Like compute and optics, that's how I think about these things. Like we've now moved compute and optics into the pocket with a phone. Like where do I take it next? I mean, I can probably bring it to the head, right? Maybe some glasses with some compute on board. I mean, the next step is in the brain, right? And I think that That
doesn't sound very exciting.
Right, and neither to me, right? So that's sort of why I say, What gets replaced by what does a smartphone replace? I don't think it gets replaced anytime soon. I think use cases grow from it. I think maybe we move the.
Do you think a watch is a good bet?
A watch?
A watch. I mean, it's already moving in that direction, maybe.
You know, I think watches augment the experience. I think you'll start seeing an ecosystem of devices that piggyback off the smartphone and deliver notifications or information in different ways, whether it's glasses that give you heads-up displays or your watch that's telling you that somebody's pinging you on Messenger. But the fundamental mobility, the connectivity, and the compute that exists in these handheld devices, I think that's going to be around for like a long time.
Okay. The third one is, how soon will we be able to teleport Mark Zuckerberg to this conference?
I think it depends on what you mean by teleport, right? In some ways, we could do that today, right? I could call him on Messenger now. He probably wouldn't be very happy given the time in the States. But we could call him on Messenger, we could set him up, and he'd be here. That'd be some version of presence already, right? You can go a step further where you could put on a VR headset, right? And some of the technology that we're working on evolving is, today we could sit here, you and I could put on a headset, Mark could have his headset on in California. We'd all have our avatars, but you could see facial movements and expressions, things that draw you in, things that make you feel like you're with somebody, even though they look cartoonish. Over time, how do I put a 360 camera in his house so that it feels like we can actually see him, we're seeing the contours of his body, et cetera. And then, I think the ultimate thing, which I would love, by the way, if you're thinking about teleportation, Star Trek style. Where I take I take atoms and I just distribute them throughout the universe in some random fashion, as opposed to getting on a plane.
Very scary. I don't want my atoms to be mixed up, but well, maybe that's
that one I would love. I mean, given the jet lag that I'm battling now and the time it takes to get around the world, I think being able to move your atoms around in a rapid fashion in a safe way, that's not bad.
Will the screen, the way we know it today, be dead?
I think it depends on how you think about the screen. Look, screens have evolved and changed. From the CRT TV in a movie theater to flat screens that you have in your house. I mean, I think companies are working on things that are basically they feel like the wall, and you've got the panel in there. You've got screens in your pocket. You may have screens on your face if we're putting on glasses. But fundamentally, I think again, until you tap into an optic nerve and directly change what's happening, like screens are going to be around. I think what people do on them, how they do things on them, what they do on them will vary based on sort of screen size or dimension.
This is for the ladies in the house. When can I point my device camera at a dress and get a buy button on my screen?
Well, I don't think it's just like I would love the same thing for a suit or a shirt or pants. I mean, is that just me?
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, it's also for the men in the house. I'm sorry, my apologies.
Look, some of this you can do today, right? Sephora's got a great app where you can hold it up and through AR effects, try on makeup, try on blush, try on lipstick, see what the color looks like, and give you a really good readout of that, and then you can go and buy that. So some of that's already here today.
We know about that. Most of the ladies never put out pictures on Facebook without using the editing tools. I think we know about it, yeah.
There's a little bit less about editing tools and more about what you look like. But look, I think that in terms of understanding, what do I need to do to be able to actually put an accurate dress or a shirt on somebody? You need to really understand the contours of their body, what they look like from all dimensions, right, from front, back, side, top, bottom. And then I need to understand the same attributes and properties of the piece of clothing. So how does that dress fit? How does it hang? How does it shape? What is the shape of it? And then I need to merge those two. A lot of that technology exists or is being created. So I'd say within the next year or two, I'm very hopeful that we can really start trying on clothes at home, seeing what they actually fit like. Because I don't know how many of you have ever ordered something, online or tried something, or even tried something in the dim light of a store and brought it home and be like, why did I just buy this? Like, this looks terrible. Like, that happens.
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
Also, Ash, Hollywood would like us to believe that one fine morning there's going to be a human-looking robo who's going to take over the world, and we are all going to be at his mercy and his beck and call. Can you assure us that it's not happening anytime soon?
Well, based on last night, I think first it's a woman, not a him, right? And,
I'd love that, yeah. Maybe it happens, yeah.
And I think that's great. No, look, we create these movies and then we sort of transpose reality onto those movies because we think like that's what's going to happen. I don't see that happening. I think that
you don't see that happening, or you hope it doesn't happen?
Both, frankly, and maybe it's the not wanting to happen that prevents me from seeing it. But look, I think those who are very close to AI and understand how limited, how powerful it is, but how limited it is. This just feels like such a distant thing, and particularly if you start, and I'm not a philosopher, but if you start talking about consciousness and what is consciousness, how do you describe what consciousness is?
How much can a machine learn?
And feel, and what does what does it mean to be conscious, right? I actually don't know the answer.
It almost scares me sometimes because my all-time favorite in AI is a gentleman who has the voice of Morgan Freeman and who gets to stay with Mark Zuckerberg. I think I am fascinated by that concept, but we just hope it stays like that. What is the most exciting thing that you've done with VR?
Oh, that's a great question. So. Look, a lot of VR today, and we have Oculus outside. I would urge anyone who hasn't tried it to give it a go. A lot of what's happening today in VR is around gaming, right? And it's very natural for that because of the type of computing required, the type of experiences, the type of tools. These are all just derivatives and offshoots of the video game industry. But for me, and what I really love about VR, I'm not a gamer. VR is very much, it's the ultimate empathy machine, right? And what that means is you feel present, right? When you put on a headset, it feels like, you're looking at somebody right in the eye, and that eye contact, right, which is what we humans sort of gravitate towards and define presence with, it's almost jarring the first time you feel it. When you put on, you're completely moved and floored with how connected you feel with the person you're looking at in front of you. And so for me, as we think about storytelling, as we think about building empathy, as we think about building bridges across the world, people connecting with people is the fundamental thing that I think breaks down barriers. And so we've done pieces like Clouds Over Sidra, which we showed at Davos, that traced Syrian refugees, and the plight that they went through. We just did release something at Tribeca last year called Step Up to the Line, which explores what happens to prisoners in the California penal system, not just as they come in, but as they leave and they try to reintegrate into society. And if you think it's hard coming in, try being in prison for 20 years and then trying to reintegrate in. So, when people put that on, they just have a different view of, hey, this isn't just some random prisoner, but I've connected with somebody, I felt it. And, we can't connect with everybody in the world. We just don't have the time or the cycles to go do that. But being able to put on a headset and feel that empathy, that's incredibly powerful.
I'm going to send this last question your way with a little bit of a friendly caution because, I would expect you to use a little bit of diplomatic discretion in answering it, if you will. Do you think that television, the way we know it today, is going to be dead very soon?
Again, I think it depends on what you mean by television.
Okay, the television is the way we, it's a little bit of appointment viewing on a small screen at appointed times with more like a push content kind of an environment is how we view television today, right?
So, look, the need and the human appetite for great content, great produced content, doesn't go away. Right? Suddenly, it's not like suddenly we're going to become people who don't love stories, who don't want to understand things. The need for highly curated, highly produced, authentic news and conversation, that doesn't go away. Right? Now, how does it get delivered? Sure, that's been changing for decades anyway, right? Is it coming over the air? Is it coming through a cable? Is it coming, via the internet? Those are, and I'm not trivializing those, but those are all things that will change. But the human need for content and for curated content, that doesn't change, in any way. How do we consume it? I still think for the longest time, TVs are still really, really important. If you look at data, Netflix just released it this week, which no matter how people sign up, they may sign up on a tablet, they may sign up on a smartphone. Within 3 months, 70% of the people are watching content on a TV, right? There's just something communal as I sit around with family or with friends that I want to watch together. There's also something about just seeing it on a big screen. Why do we all go to the movies, right? It's to escape, it's to be immersed, it's to have that content. So I don't think that changes fundamentally.
Thank you for saying that. We feel very relieved, at least temporarily. Well, that was the last question, and thank you so much for indulging, Mark, Ash, because this was fun, and I could go on all morning about this, but I think we should have to move forward. Want to talk a little bit about the Indian ecosystem. As you know, that we've had a renewed focus on digitization and startup culture and entrepreneurship. There is a lot of expectation from the Indian youth because we are a very young country. So in your sphere of influence, where do you think the jobs of the future are going to be?
Yeah, look, I think there's sort of geographic and then there is sort of functional. Right. Geographic, the way that the world is connected, I don't think you suddenly need to just be in Silicon Valley to have an impact on the world, right? It might have been that way 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but innovation exists everywhere around the globe today, right? We're connected, the networks are on. So, I don't think that people should feel sort of bound by where they are and think that, oh, because I'm in India or because I'm in Nigeria or because I'm in China, like I can't innovate. I think that is dramatically changing. In terms of the skill sets, a lot of it is still around, and this is my limited view of the world because I've been in technology the whole time, but very much around programming, around data science, around AI over time. But look, even every community is touched by this, right? If I think about VR again, how do you tell a story when suddenly you've moved from this flat screen to a 360 environment? How do we haven't even invented the grammar on how to tell those stories, right? Do I give you cues? How do I give you cues? Oh, that's weird. How do I give cues behind me, right, to know that that's there? So I think there's opportunity across the board, and it's just sort of like, what is the part of technology that gets you excited? And then how do you take that passion and build something with it?
Ash, since we are on the topic of entrepreneurship, I think there is a little observation that I have about Facebook from my interaction with Facebook for the past 4 years. It is a company that probably has experimentation ingrained into the DNA. I mean, there is no fear of failure, which is how amazing is that for a startup or an entrepreneurial company. But when you become as big as Facebook, do you think it is some orientation within the company, or is it just a ringside view that there is no fear of failure?
Yeah, no, look, culture is something that we spend a lot of time, I personally spend a lot of time thinking about, right? As we've gone from really 25 to 250 to 2,500 to 25,000 people now, how do we maintain that innovative hacker mentality, that culture that got us to where we are? Look, there's a few examples that we can look at. The first one just really starts with our recruiting process for engineering. Right? We have this program called Boot Camp, which all engineers, no matter sort of what level you're hired into, whether you're the most senior engineer or you're just out of university, or even out of high school, you come into this boot camp program for 6 weeks, and you're trained on the tools, you're trained on the infrastructure, you're given all the things that you need to understand how to be part of the Facebook engineering ecosystem. And then something really interesting happens, right? In most companies, managers come in and they pick or they hire people, and you're going to go work on widget X or on technology B. We do it totally differently. We flip it on its head. So managers have to come in with their projects and pitch and sell recruits from boot camp to come join them. Right, so that alone, like that dynamic keeps things extremely fresh, right? Like you can work on projects and you can go recruit. You have this endless pool of engineers that we have, but they've got to want to follow you, right? And that's a very different mentality than I think a lot of other companies use of like, you're going to come in and you're going to work on this and like, are you passionate about it? Like, no, like this allows people to match passion and skills. And I think like that is one of the big things that we continue to do. Look, another one in terms of culture is we use Facebook internally a lot, right? I'm friends with just about everyone I work with, and look, what this does is it builds empathy, right? So when I landed in Mumbai a couple of days ago, like I'd seen pictures of all the folks I was going to work with at Holi, or of their kids, and there's this intense and instant connection, and with that connection you build that empathy, and with that empathy comes trust, and with that trust you can move fast, right? And that trust allows you to take risks, where I know that you've got my back. I know that if I fail, you're going to help pick me up, and we're going to keep going. And look, this comes from the top, right? Like Mark, Cheryl, this is how they've set the culture of the company. And in many ways, it's our job to continue to preserve it.
That's really fantastic. Sounds really nice. Also, talking about entrepreneurship and product development, do you have some India-inspired products? Are you India-inspired products?
Yeah, look, there's companies, especially Silicon Valley companies, used to build products in headquarters and customize them on the margins and try to roll those out. And that just doesn't work. And we at Facebook have really come to understand that. And I keep saying empathy, but like we work really hard to build empathy within engineering, right? So if you think about the average engineer at Facebook, he or she has an iPhone, is on a high bandwidth LTE network, or has a high-end Android phone. Like that's just like not what this market's all about. So we implemented this thing called 2G Tuesdays, where our engineers are basically forced to simulate what it's like to be on a 2G network. And that just changes and flips things on their heads, right? So we went and we built this application called Facebook Lite, which our normal Android app is, call it like 100 megs. Well, this is a 1 meg app, right? For instance, it cuts down to the core features that people want, and you have the Facebook experience now in a much more robust way on a lower end network, right? So teaching and building empathy is something that we push really, really hard on. We also saw through our data another sort of alarming fact, which was in India specifically, if you look at profile pictures, right, about 70% of men have profile pictures on their Facebook pages. But when you look at women, the number is closer to 50 or 55%. And like, why does that matter, right? Profile pictures are one of the indication of how engaged you are in the community, how much you're out there posting, how much you're connected, how much of a voice do you have, how does your network grow? So profile pictures are very, very important in that way. So we listened to the market, and it turns out that there was a lot of fear around what would happen with my profile picture, particularly with women. Like, would people download it? Would they share it? Would they, put graffiti on it? Like, what would happen? And so, sort of listening to that with women all over India, our teams went back and built this photo protect feature, which, prevents people from, if you turn it on, it prevents people from downloading your profile picture. It prevents them from screenshotting it. It puts filters over it so that, it can't sort of be defaced or done like that. And like, this has increased. This is the knock-on effects are it's increased profile pictures on Facebook, which has now increased participation by women in the community, which again leads to diversity, leads to different views, leads to empowerment. And so these are just a few examples of the types of things that we've done for India.
Amazing, Ash. And we have Minister Gadkari in the house, and maybe we can ask him that.
You should ask him about the flying cars.
Are they going to be flying cars? Are we going to have flying cars very soon? So Mr. You were just mentioning waterways and seaways. I just want to add flyways to it.
Actually, we are planning for amphibious buses, for seaplane. We name it as flying boat. But regarding flying cars, we don't have any proposal. But if anything from any new technology from any company, from any country, we will encourage them and we will support them. Self-drive, I have reservation about it. Because
in India,
because crores of people, the driving is the most important job for them. Presently, we have 22 lakh shortage of drivers, and now we have started a driving training institute, and where we want to train the drivers. And employment potential is a big problem. So, driverless car, I have a reservation for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Gadkari.
So good. I didn't say anything. I didn't promise anything for the future.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Ash. It was really, really exciting to interact with you this morning. And since this is a session about innovation, I would like to sum up everything by saying that, during my visit to Menlo Park headquarters, there was a very interesting thing that I observed. And there was a door which had the logo of Sun Microsystems on it. And I got very intrigued, though I knew that the Facebook facility had been a Sun Microsystems facility acquired by Facebook for the headquarters. But I still found it very intriguing that why is that logo, what is that logo doing there on that door? And when I asked around, I was told that in our space, this is just a polite reminder to everybody here that in our space, if we cease to innovate, we cease to exist. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience. And thank you, Ash, for being a wonderful guest.
Thank you.